Thomas's early days on Sodor. Once upon a time, there was a small island called Sodor. And on the island of Sodor, there was a little railway known as the Northwestern Railway. The railway was run by a man named Sir Topham Hatt. Sir Topham Hatt had 4 engines. A little tank engine called Thomas, an older blue engine called Edward, a long and fast green engine called Henry, and his long and fast express engine called Gordon. One day, Gordon was boasting to Edward, "You watch me, little Edward, as I rush through with the express. That will be a fine sight for you." "Goodbye, little Edward. Look out for me this afternoon." Edward went off too to do some shunting. Edward liked shunting. It was fun playing with trucks. He would come up quietly and give them a push. Then he would stop, and the silly cars would go bump into each other. Whatever is happening? Edward played till there were no more trucks. Then he stopped to rest. Presently, he heard a whistle. Gordon came puffing along very slowly and very crossly. Instead of nice shiny coaches, he was pulling a lot of very dirty coal trucks. "A goods train, a goods train, a goods train," he grumbled. "The shame of it, the shame of it, oh, the shame of it." He went slowly through, with the trucks clattering and banging behind him. Edward laughed and went to find some more trucks. Gordon puffed along with his line of trucks. Then Gordon reached the big hill on the main line. Gordon struggled and struggled up that hill. "That is it. I give up." What's he up to now? "Come on, Gordon. You're not even trying." "I can't do it. The noisy trucks hold an engine back so. If they were coaches, clean, sensible things that come quietly, now that would be different." Meanwhile, Edward was having a rest when the porter came up to him. "Gordon can't get up the hill," the porter called to Edward's driver. "Will you take Edward and push him, please?" So Edward set off. He found Gordon halfway up and very cross. "Come on, Gordon. You're just not trying. No, I won't do it. I can't do it." Edward's driver came up. "We've come to push." "No use at all," said Gordon. "Wait and see," said Edward's driver. They brought the train back to the bottom of the hill. "Beep, beep, I'm ready," said Edward. Boop, boop. No good, grumbled Gordon. The guards blew his whistle, and they pulled and pushed as hard as they could. I can do it! I can do it! I can do it! Puffed Gordon. I will do it! I will do it! I will do it! Puffed Edward. I can do it! I will do it! I can do it! I will do it! I can do it! I will do it! Edward pushed and puffed and puffed and pushed as hard as he could. And almost before he realized it, Gordon found himself at the top of the hill. I've done it! I've done it! I've done it! He said proudly. He forgot all about Edward and didn't wait to say thank you. Edward was left far behind. At the next station, he found out that the driver and fireman were very pleased with him. The fireman gave him a nice long drink, and the driver said, I'll get out my paint tomorrow and give you a beautiful coat of blue with red stripes. Then you'll be the smartest engine in the shed. Soon the summer of 1924 came to an end, and autumn was in full swing. The rain came too. One rainy day, Henry was pulling a passenger train, but got afraid of a few drops of rain. He went into a tunnel and squeaked through his funnel and never came out again. His driver and fireman argued with him, but he would not move. Come on, Henry, off you go. You can't just keep the passengers waiting. No, the rain will spoil my lovely green paint and red stripes, he said. The guard blew his whistle till he had no more breath and waved his flag till his arms ached, but Henry still stayed in the tunnel and blew steam at him. I'm not going to spoil my lovely green paint and red stripes for you. The fat controller arrived. We will pull you out, said the fat controller, but Henry only blew steam at him. So they got out the rope and the fat controller shouted, 1, 2, 3, pull! Everyone pulled. Come on, pull harder, pull harder. Come on, everyone. He's not moving. Except the fat controller. My doctor has forbidden me to pull. But still Henry stayed in the tunnel. Then they tried pushing from the other end. The fat controller said, 1, 2, 3, push! But he didn't help. My doctor has also forbidden me to push, he said. They pushed and pushed and pushed, but still Henry stayed in the tunnel. At last, Thomas came along. The guard waved his red flag and stopped him. Everyone argued with Henry. Look, it has stopped raining, they said. Yes, but it will begin again soon, said Henry. And what would become of my lovely green paint and red stripes then? Thomas pushed and puffed and pushed as hard as ever he could. But still Henry stayed in the tunnel. Eventually, even the fat controller gave up. We shall take away your rails, he said, and leave you here for always and always and always. all he could do was watch the trains rushing through the other tunnel. He was very sad because he thought no one would ever see his lovely green paint and red stripes again. As time went on, Edward and Gordon often passed by. Edward would say, "Beep, beep, hello." Gordon would say, "Boop, boop, boop, serves you right." Poor Henry had no steam to answer. His fire had gone out. Soot and dirt from the tunnel had spoiled his lovely green paint and red stripes anyway. He wondered if he would ever pull trains again. But I think he deserved his punishment. Don't you? Gordon was rushing through with the express. He came to the tunnel where Henry stayed bricked up and lonely. "Oh dear," he said, "why did I worry about rain spoiling my lovely coat of paint? Will the fat controller ever forgive me and let me out again?" "I'm going to poop at Henry," said Gordon. He was almost there when... Sheesh! And there was Gordon going slower and slower in a cloud of steam. His driver stopped the train. "What has happened to me?" said Gordon. "I feel so weak." "You've burst your safety valve," said the driver. "You can't pull the train anymore." "Oh dear," he said, "and we were going so nicely too. And look, there's Henry laughing at me." Everyone came to see what was the matter. "Huh," said the fat controller. "I never liked these big engines. Always going wrong. Send for another engine at once." While the guard went to find one, they uncoupled Gordon, who had enough puff to slink onto a siding out of the way. Edward was the only engine available. "I'll come and try," he said. "Huh," said Gordon. "It's no good." "Edward can't push the train." Edward pushed and puffed and puffed and pushed, but he couldn't move the heavy coaches. "I told you," said Gordon. "Why not let Henry try?" "Yes," said the fat controller, "I will." "Will you help pull this train, Henry?" he asked. "Oh, yes," said Henry. So they took down the wall and put back the rails. They lit up Henry's fire and made a nice lot of steam. Then, when he had enough steam, he puffed out. He was dirty and covered with cobwebs. "Oh, I'm stiff, he groaned. "Have a run to ease your joints and find a turntable," said the fat controller. When he returned, Henry felt much better. They coupled him up. "Beep, beep," said Edward. "I'm ready." "Beep, beep, 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 beep," said Henry. "So am I." "Pull hard, we'll do it. Push hard, we'll do it," they said. "We've done it together, we've done it together," they said. "You've done it, hooray, you've done it, hooray," sang the coaches. Everyone was happy. The fat controller leaned out of the window to wave at Edward and Henry. But the train was going so fast that his hat flew up into a field where a goat ate it for his tea. Oh, bollocks! They never stopped till they came to the final station. The passengers all said thank you, and the fat controller promised Henry a new coat of paint. On their way back home, Edward and Henry helped Gordon back to the shed. The three engines are now great friends. Thomas, on the other hand, worked in the yard at the big station called Knapford Station. He brings coaches for the bigger engines to take on long journeys. And when trains come in, he pulls the empty coaches away so that the big engines can go and rest. Thomas thinks no engine works as hard as he does. And he loves playing tricks on them, including Gordon, the biggest and proudest engine of all. Thomas likes whistling rudely at him. Ah! Wake up, lazy bones. Why don't you work hard like me? Oh, Thomas, you little One day after pulling the big express, Gordon had arrived back at the station very tired. He was just going to sleep when... Ah! Wake up, lazy bones. Do some hard work for a change. You can catch me. Ah! Oh, Thomas, you little face. Instead of going to sleep again, Gordon thought how he could get back at Thomas. One morning, Thomas wouldn't wake up. His driver and fireman couldn't make him start. His fire had gone out and there was not enough steam. It was nearly time for the express. People were waiting, but the coaches weren't ready. At last, Thomas started. Oh dear, he yawned. He fussed into the station where Gordon was waiting. Hurry up, you, said Gordon. Hurry yourself, replied Thomas. Gordon began making his plan. Yes, said Gordon, I will. And almost before the coaches had stopped moving, Gordon reversed quickly and was coupled to the train. Get in quickly, please, he whistled. Thomas usually pushed behind the big trains to help them start, but he was always uncoupled first. This time, Gordon started so quickly they forgot to uncouple Thomas. Gordon's chance had come. Come on, puffed Gordon to the coaches. The train went faster and faster. Too fast for Thomas. He wanted to stop, but he couldn't. Beep, beep, stop. Hurry, he said. You can't get away, said the coaches. Ha! Poor Thomas was going faster than he had ever gone before. He was out of breath, and his wheels hurt him, but he had to go on. I shall never be the same again, he puffed. My wheels will be quite worn out. At last they stopped at a station. Thomas was uncoupled, and he felt very silly and exhausted. Next, he puffed onto a turntable, thinking of everyone laughing at him. Then he puffed onto a siding out of the way. Well, little Thomas, chuckled Gordon, now you know what hard work means, don't you? Poor Thomas couldn't answer. He had no breath. He just puffed slowly onto a siding to rest and had a long, long drink. And then puffed home back to the sheds and was careful afterwards never to be cheeky to Gordon again. The next day, Thomas was back in the yard. I spend my time pulling coaches about, ready for you to take out on journeys. The other engines laughed. Why can't I pull passenger trains too? You're too impatient, they said. You'll be sure to leave something behind.
Ah, rubbish, said Thomas. I'll show you.
One night, he and Henry were alone. Henry was ill. The men worked hard, but he didn't get better. He felt just as bad next morning. Henry usually pulled the first train and Thomas had to get his coaches ready. If Henry is ill, he thought, perhaps I should pull his train. Thomas ran off to find the coaches.
Come along, he fussed. There's plenty of time, said the coaches.
Thomas brought the coaches to the platform and wanted to run round to the front at once.
But his driver wouldn't let him. Don't be impatient, Thomas.
Thomas waited and waited.
The people got in. The conductor and station master walked up and down. The porter banged the doors, and still Henry didn't come. Thomas got more and more excited.
The fat controller came to see what was the matter, and the guard and station master told him about Henry. Find another engine, he said. There's only Thomas, the guard said. Well, you'll have to do it then, Thomas. Be quick now. Hooray! So Thomas ran round to the front and backed down on the coaches, ready to start. Let's not be impatient, said the driver. We'll wait until everything is ready. But Thomas was too excited to listen. What happened then, no one knows. Perhaps they forgot to couple Thomas to the train, or perhaps the driver had pulled the lever by mistake. Anyhow, Thomas started. As he passed the first signal tower, men waved and shouted. But he didn't stop. They're waving because I'm such a splendid engine, he thought importantly. Henry says it's hard to pull trains, but I think it's easy. Hurry, he said, pretending to be like Gordon. People have never seen me pulling a train before. It's nice of them to wave, and he whistled. Beep, beep. Thank you. Then they approached the signal at danger. Bother, he said. And we were going so nicely, too. What a nuisance signals are. He blew an angry peep, peep on his whistle. The signalman ran up. Hello, Thomas, he said. What are you doing? I'm pulling a train, said Thomas. Can't you see? Where are your coaches, then? Thomas looked back. Why, bless me, he said, if we haven't left them behind. Yes, you'd better go quickly and fetch them. Poor Thomas was so sad he nearly cried. Cheer up, said the driver. Let's go back and try again. At the big station, all the passengers were talking at once. They were telling Sir Topham Hatt what a bad railway it was. But when they saw Thomas and saw how sad he was, they couldn't be cross. They coupled him to the train, and this time he really pulled it. That night, when Thomas returned to the sheds, the engines laughed at him. Look, they said, there's Thomas who wanted to pull a special train, but forgot about the coaches. But I'm tired of pushing coaches. I want to see the world. The bigger engines didn't take much notice, for Thomas was a little engine with a long tongue. But then Edward came to the sheds. He was a kind engine and felt sorry for Thomas. I've got some trucks to take tomorrow, he said. If you take them instead of me, I'll push coaches in the yard. Thank you, said Thomas.
That would be nice.
The next morning, the engines asked their drivers, and when they said yes, Thomas ran off happily to find trucks. Trucks are silly and noisy. They talk a lot and don't attend to what they are doing. And I'm sorry to say they play tricks on an engine who is not used to them. Edward knew all about trucks. He warned Thomas to be careful, but Thomas was too excited to listen. The shunter fastened the coupling, and when the signal dropped, Thomas was ready. The guard blew his whistle. Beep, beep, whistled Thomas and started off. But the trucks weren't ready. Oh, they cried. Wait, Thomas, wait. Come along, he said. All right, don't fuss. All right, don't fuss, grumbled the trucks. Thomas began going faster and faster. Whoosh, he whistled, and he rushed through Henry's tunnel. Hurry, hurry, called Thomas. He was feeling very proud of himself, but the cars were getting crosser and crosser. At last, Thomas slowed down as he came to Gordon's Hill. Now, steady, said the driver as they reached the top. They began to put on the brakes. We're stopping, called Thomas. No, answered the cars, bumping into each other. Go on. And almost before they stopped moving, they pushed Thomas down the hill. And were rattling and laughing behind him. Help! Called Thomas. Poor Thomas tried so hard to stop them from making him go too fast. Stop pushing, he hissed. But the cars took no notice. Go on, they giggled in their silly way. The driver tried to put on the brakes, but it was useless. There's the station! Oh dear, what shall I do? He cried. The signalman changed the point. He rattled straight through and swerved into the goods yard. Thomas shut his eyes. I must stop. When he opened his eyes, he saw that he was just an inch from the buffers. And there stood the Fat Controller.
What are you doing here, Thomas? He said. I brought Edward's truck, sir. Why were you coming so fast? They pushed me, sir. I didn't mean to. Well, you've got a lot to learn about trucks, little Thomas. After pushing them about in the yard for a few weeks, you'll know about as much about them as Edward. Then you'll be a really useful engine. Every day, the Fat Controller came to the station to catch his train. Hello, he always said to Thomas. Remember, don't be impatient, Thomas. You can never be as fast or strong as Gordon, but you can be a really useful engine. Don't let the silly trucks tease you.
Oh, yes, sir, said Thomas. I will be extra useful. That's a good engine, said the Fat Controller.
Now then, I best be off. I'm meeting the new engine today.
Ooh, he's coming today. How exciting, Thomas said.
That afternoon, the engine arrived. Look, said Henry, it's the new engine. Hello, said the Fat Controller. What's your name? James, sir, said the engine. Am I in the right place? Indeed you are. Splendid. And who are all these engines?
I'm Edward. I'm Gordon. And I'm Henry.
Nice meeting you all. Now then, sir, what's my first job? Well, I want you to pull some trucks. Splendid, said James. Be careful, said Henry. The trucks are extremely troublesome. Trucks? I bet they're not that bad, said James and set off to the yard.
At the yard, Thomas was shunting James's trucks. Oh, hello there, said Thomas. You must be the new engine.
Yes, said James. I'm James. Who are you? I'm Thomas, the #1 engine.
Nice meeting you.
Here are your trucks, James, said Thomas, and then set off to find coaches.
Right then, let's get started.
Oh, said the truck. We want a proper engine, not a black monster. Black monster? Come along, you stupid trucks. Oh, we won't go. Oh, come along, said James as he pulled the snorting trucks out of the yard. As
Thomas
was shunting, he saw a small coach and a strange thing that his driver called a crane. That's the breakdown train, he told Thomas. The cranes are used for lifting heavy things like engines and coaches and trucks. James puffed along the line, pulling the heavy trucks. But the trucks were now planning tricks. Let's push in, they said,
as James puffed along.
After James had finished climbing Gordon's hill, the trucks played their tricks. Go on, they said. Go faster. Ow! Called James as the trucks pushed him. Go on. Faster. They're pushing me. Ah! Use the brakes, shouted the driver. Then there was more trouble. Oh crap, they're on fire again! Help, called James. My brakes are on fire. They're made of wood.
Holy guacamole, called Henry.
God, I hate these wooden brakes, said the driver. Help, said James. Holy smokes! I'd like to teach those stupid trucks a lesson.
Quick, said the driver. Stop the train and put the fire out.
But the trucks were still laughing. Go on. Ah! I want to stop, called James.
But there was more trouble ahead.
Ahead lay a field where some cows were grazing. Oh no! Jump out! James shut his eyes as he crashed into the field.
Meanwhile, Thomas was in the yard.
Soon came the alarm. James is off the line! The breakdown train! Quickly! Thomas was coupled on, and off they went. Thomas worked his hardest. Hurry, 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 he said. He wasn't pretending to be like Gordon. He really meant it. Bother those trucks and their tricks, he thought. I hope poor James isn't hurt. The drivers and firemen landed in a bush, so they only had a few broken bones and a couple of bruises. They went to James and feeled him all over to see if he was hurt. Never mind, James, they said. It was those wooden brakes and those wretched trucks. We always said they were no good. Thomas arrived and pushed the breakdown train into position. And the breakdown train sprung into action. This will teach you a lesson, said Thomas. Oh dear, yes it will, they said. They left the broken trucks, and with the cranes they put James back on the rails. Thank you, Thomas, said James. Not a problem, any time, said Thomas. Now, let's get back home. I can't move. Don't worry, I'll help you back to the shed. At the yard, Sir Topham Hatt was there. Well done, Thomas, he said. I heard everything and I'm proud of you. James shall have some metal brakes that don't catch fire and a new coat of paint, and you shall have a branch line all to yourself. Oh, thank you, sir, said Thomas happily. Now Thomas is as happy as can be. He runs a branch line from Knapford to Farquhar, along with 2 coaches called Annie and Clarabelle. Thomas pulls them along the line all day. And James was taken to the works for repairs. Right then, James, said the workman. Let's get you fixed up. Right then, James, said the workman. Now you're repaired. Now time for your new coat of paint. And you will also be the number 5 engine on the island of Sodor. Now then, what paint would you like? What have you got? Well, we have this blue over here. Nah, said James. There are already enough blue engines on this railway. Alright then, how about a nice green? Finally, we've got this colour, a nice bright red. Ooh, give me that, said James. So the workmen started repainting James.
all painted red, and set off to work. Soon James was on his way back to Knapford. He enjoyed his life on Sodor, but he still had a lot to learn. James puffed into Knapford Station. "Hello, James." "Whoa," said the Fat Controller. "What do you think, sir?" said James. You look very, very splendid." "Oh, thank you, sir," said James. "You're also a very special mixed traffic engine," said the Fat Controller. "You can pull coaches and trucks quite easily, but you must learn from your mistakes." James knew what the Fat Controller meant. He could well remember that dreadful accident on his first day. "You are to pull coaches today," said the Fat Controller, "and Edward will help you." "Be careful with the coaches, James," said Edward. "They don't like being bumped. Trucks are silly and noisy. They need to be bumped and taught to behave. But coaches get cross and will pay you out." They took the coaches to the platform and were both coupled on in front. The Fat Controller, the station master, and some little boys all came to admire James's shining rods in red paint. James was pleased. "I'm a really splendid engine," he thought, and suddenly let off steam. A shower of water landed on the Fat Controller's new top hat. Just then the guard's whistle blew and James thought they had better go. So they went. Come on, said James. Don't push, don't push, replied Edward. Don't go so fast, grumbled the coaches. But James didn't listen. He wanted to run away before the Fat Controller could call him back. He didn't even want to stop at the first station. Edward tried hard to stop, but the coach was beyond the platform before they stopped, and they had to go back to let the passengers get out. Lots of people came to look at James, and as no one seemed to know about the Fat Controller's top hat, James felt happier. Presently, they came to the junction, where Thomas was waiting with his two coaches. "Hello, James," said Thomas kindly. "Feeling better?" "That's right." That's my guard's whistle. I must go. Sorry, I can't stop. I don't know what the Fat Controller would do without me to run this branch line." And he popped off importantly with his two coaches, Annie and Clarabelle. Then they left the station. They passed the field where James had had his accident. The fence was mended and the cows were back again. They clattered through Edward's station yard and started to climb the hill beyond. "It's ever so steep, puffed James. I've done it before, puffed Edward. It's steep, but we'll do it. The two engines puffed together as they pulled the train up the long hill. They both rested at the next station. Edward told James how Gordon had stuck on the hill. James laughed so much that it got hiccups and surprised an old man. He dropped his parcel, and the station master and the guard had to run after him picking it up. Then Edward and James set off back home. James was unusually quiet in the shed because he was worried what the Fat Controller would say about his top hat. The next day, the fat controller spoke to him. "If you can't behave, I shall take away your red coat and have you painted blue." James didn't want that at all. He was very rough with the grumbling coaches as he brought them to the platform. "Don't talk, come on!" Gordon never has to fetch his own couches, he thought, and he's only painted blue. To make James even more cross, this time no one came to see him. I'll show them, James said. "They think Gordon's the only one who can pull couches." Come on, he puffed, and the coaches, squeaking and groaning in protest, clattered over the points up to the open line. Hurry, puffed James. "You're going too fast, said the coaches. And indeed, they were going so fast that they swayed from side to side. James laughed and tried to go faster, but the coaches wouldn't let him. "We're going to stop! "What's the matter?" James asked his driver. "The brakes are hard on. Leak in the pipe, most likely. You banged the coaches enough to make a leak in anything." The guard and the driver got down and looked at the brake pipes all along the train. At last they found a hole where rough treatment had made a joint work loose. "How shall we mend it?" said the guard. James's driver thought for a moment. "We'll do it with newspaper and a leather bootlace." "Well, where is the bootlace coming from?" asked the guard. "We haven't one." "Ask the passengers," advised the fireman. So the guard made everyone get out. "Has anybody got a leather bootlace?" he asked. They all said no, except one in a bowler hat, whose name was Jemiah Joblin, who tried to hide his feet. "You have a leather bootlace there, I see, sir," said the guard. "Please give it to me." "I won't," said Jemiah Joblin. "Then," said the guard sternly, "I'm afraid this train will just stop where it is." The passengers all told the crew what a bad railway it was, but the guard climbed into his van and the driver and fireman made James let off steam. So they all told Jemiah Joblin he was a bad man instead. At last, he gave them his laces. The driver tied a pad of newspaper tightly around the hole, and James was able to pull his train. But he was a sadder and a wiser James, and took care never to bump coaches again. Next day, the fat controller spoke sternly to James. "You have been a very reckless and bad engine," said the fat controller. "Your carelessness has caused confusion and delay," he said. "As punishment, you shall stay in your shed until you are wanted." And the fat controller went away. So James was left in the shed. He felt miserable. "Oh dear," he thought, "I shall have to stay in the shed for always, and no one will ever see my red coat again. All because I went so fast that I made a hole in one of my coaches and had to be mended with, of all things, a passenger's bootlace." At last, a week later, the fat controller spoke to him. "I see you are sorry, James," he said. "I hope now that you will be a better engine. You have given me a lot of trouble. People are laughing at my railway, and I do not like that at all." "I'm very sorry, sir," said James. I will try to behave." "That's a good engine," said the fat controller. "I want
want you to pull some trucks for me. Run along and find them." So James puffed happily away. Thomas was shunting James's trucks. "Hello, James," said Thomas. "Have you got some bootlaces ready?" And he ran away, laughing. "Oh, no," said the trucks. "We want a proper engine, not a red monster." James took no notice and started as soon as the guard was ready. Come along, he said. We won't, screamed the trucks. And James pulled the snorting train out of the station. The trucks tried hard to make him give up, but he still kept on. Sometimes their brakes would slip on, and sometimes their axles would run hot. Each time they would have to stop and put the trouble right. Each time James would start again. Give up, you can't pull us, you can't, called the trucks. I can and I will. At last they saw Gordon's Hill ahead. Look out for trouble, James, warned his driver. We'll go fast and get them up before we know it. So James went faster and faster. Soon they were halfway up the hill. I'm doing it. But it was hard work. Will the top ever come? Then, with a sudden jerk, it all came easier. I've done it, he puffed. Hooray! It's easy now. But his driver shut off steam. They've done it again. We've left our tail behind. The last trucks were running backwards down the hill. The guard applied the brakes and the runaway trucks came to a halt. So that's why it was easy, puffed James. What silly things trucks are. Meanwhile, the guard had stopped Edward, who was pulling coaches. Shall I help you, James? Called Edward. No, thank you, answered James. I'll pull them myself. Good. Don't let them beat you. So James got ready, then with a pip, he was off. I can do it, puffed James. He pulled and puffed as hard as he could. Beep, 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 beep. You're doing well, whistled Edward. As James slowly struggled up the steep hill, with clouds of smoke and steam pouring from his funnel. I've done it, he puffed. He panted and disappeared over the hill. They reached their station safely. James was resting in the yard when Edward puffed by with a cheerful peep, peep. Then, walking towards him across the rails, James saw the fat controller. Oh dear, what will he say? But the fat controller was smiling. I was in Edward's train and saw everything, he said. You've made the most troublesome trucks on the line behave. After that, you deserve to keep your red coat. That night, James arrived at the sheds. Henry and Gordon laughed at him and said, Remember the time a bootlace had been used to get you out of trouble, James? Well, I heard of an engine who once attached to a train, but got afraid of a few drops of rain.
He went into a tunnel, squeaked through his funnel, and never came out again. Oh, don't remind him of that. Oh, and I also heard of another engine who once got stuck on a hill. But the other engines wouldn't listen to him. You talk too much, little James, Gordon would say. A fine, strong engine like me has something to talk about. I'm the only engine who can pull the express. When I'm not there, they need 2 engines. Think of that. I've pulled expresses for years and have never once lost my way. I seem to know the right line by instinct, said Gordon proudly. Every wise engine knows, of course, that the signalman works the points to make engines run on the right lines, but Gordon was so proud that he had forgotten. Wake up, little James, Gordon said the next morning. What are you doing? Odd jobs? Oh well, we all start somewhere. Run along now and fetch my coaches. James went to fetch Gordon's coaches. They were now all shiny with lovely new paint. He was careful now not to bump them, and they followed him smoothly into the station, singing happily, "We're going away, we're going away." I wish I was going with you, said James. I shall love to pull the express and go flying along the line. He left them at the station and went back to the yard. Just as Gordon, with much noise and blowing of steam, backed onto the train. The Fat Controller was on the train with other important people, and as soon as they heard the guard's whistle, Gordon started. Look at me now, he puffed, and the coaches glided after him out of the station. Boop, 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 boop. Goodbye, little James. See you tomorrow. James watched the train disappear around a curve and then went back to work. He pushed some trucks into their proper sidings and pushed some coaches for another train. He brought the coaches to the platform and was just being uncoupled when he heard a mournful, quiet shush, shush, shush. And there was Gordon trying to slide into the station without anyone noticing. Hello, Gordon. Is it tomorrow? Asked James. Gordon didn't answer. He just let off steam feebly. Did you lose your way, Gordon? No, it was lost for me, he answered crossly. I was switched off the main line onto the loop. I had to go all round and back again. Perhaps it was instinct, said James brightly. Meanwhile, all the passengers hurried to the booking office. We want our money back, they shouted. But the Fat Controller climbed on a trolley and blew the guard's whistle so loudly that everyone stopped to look at him. He promised them a new train. Gordon can't do it, he said. Will you pull it for us, James? Yes, sir. I'll try. So James was coupled on and everyone got in again. Do your best, James, said the Fat Controller kindly. Just then the guard's whistle blew and he had to run to get in. Come along, puffed James. You're pulling us well, sang the coaches. Hurry, puffed James. Stations and bridges flashed by. The passengers leaned out of the windows and cheered.
James. "Well done," said the Fat Controller. "Would you like to pull the express someday?" "Yes, please," answered James. Next day, when James came by, Gordon was pushing trucks in the yard. "I like some quiet work for a change," he said. "I'm teaching these trucks manners. You did well with those coaches, I hear. Good. We'll show them." And he gave his trucks a bump. "Oh, oh, oh!" James and Gordon are now good friends. James sometimes takes the express to give Gordon a rest. Gordon never talks about bootlaces, and they are both quite agreed on the subject of trucks. Meanwhile, on Thomas's branch line, Thomas was really enjoying himself.
He's a really useful engine, you know. All the other engines, they'll tell you so. He huffs and puffs and whistles, rushing to and fro. He's the really useful engine we adore. He's a really useful engine, you know. 'Cause the Fat Controller, he told him so. Now he's got a branch line to call his very own. He's the really useful engine we adore. He's the one, he's the number one. Thomas the Tank Engine. He's the really useful engine we adore.
One day they had to wait for Henry's train. It was late. Thomas was getting crosser and crosser. "How can I run my line properly if Henry is always late? He doesn't realize that the Fat Controller depends on me." And he whistled impatiently. At last Henry came. "Where have you been, lazy bones?" asked Thomas. "Oh dear, my system is out of order. No one understands my case. You don't know what I suffer," moaned Henry. "Rubbish," said Thomas. "You're too fat. You need exercise." The passengers boarded the train, and Thomas was so impatient to start quickly that he left the guard behind. Come along, puffed Thomas. But Clarabelle didn't want to come. "I've lost my nice guard! I've lost my nice guard!" she sobbed. Annie tried to tell Thomas, "We haven't a guard! We haven't a guard!" But he was hurrying and wouldn't listen. "Oh, come along, he said. Clarabelle tried to put on her brakes, but she couldn't without the guard. "Where's our guard? Where's our guard?" they cried. But Thomas didn't stop till they came to a signal. "Bother that signal," said Thomas. "What's the matter?" "I don't know," said the driver. "The guard will tell us in a minute." They waited and waited, but the guard didn't come. "Beep, beep! Where is our guard?" whistled Thomas. "We've left him behind," sobbed Annie and Clarabelle together. The driver, firemen, and passengers looked back, and there was the guard running as fast as he could along the line. Everybody cheered him. He was very hot, so he had a drink and told them all about it. "I'm very sorry, Mr. Guard," said Thomas. "That's all right, Thomas," said the guard. "Look, the signal's down. Let's make up for lost time."
And so they all set off again. The next day, Thomas puffed along his branch line. Every time he puffed along his branch line, he always looked forward to something special. The sight of the river. As Thomas rumbled across the bridge, he would see people fishing. Thomas often wanted to stay and watch, but his driver said,
No! What would Sir Topham Hatt say if we were late?
every time he met another engine, he would say, I want to fish. But they all had the same answer. Engines don't go fishing.
Silly stick in the mud, thought Thomas.
Thomas generally had to take in water at the station by the river. One day he stopped as usual, and his fireman put the pipe from the water tower in his tank. Then he turned the tap, but it was out of order, and no water came. Bother, said Thomas. I'm thirsty. Never mind, said his driver. We'll get some water from the river.
They found a bucket and some rope and went to the bridge. Then the driver let the bucket down into the water. The bucket was old and had 5 holes. So they had to fill it, pull it up, and empty it into Thomas's tank as quickly as they could.
There's a hole in my bucket, dear Liza, sang the fireman.
Never you mind about Liza, said the driver. You empty that bucket before you spill water all over me. You son of a bitch! They finished at last. That's good, puffed Thomas as he started. Suddenly, Thomas began to feel a pain in his boiler, while steam hissed from his safety valve in an alarming way. There's too much steam, said his driver.
Oh dear, groaned Thomas. I'm going to burst!
They damped down his fire and struggled on. I've got such a pain, Thomas hissed. Just outside the last station, they stopped, uncoupled Danny and Clarabelle, and ran Thomas, who was still hissing fit to burst, on a siding out of the way. Then, while the guard telephoned for an engine inspector, the driver wrote notices in large letters, which he hung on Thomas in front and behind. Danger! Keep away! Soon the inspector and the fat controller arrived. Cheer up, Thomas, he said. We'll soon put you right. The driver told them what has happened. So the feed pipe is blocked, said the inspector. I'll just look in the tanks. He climbed up and peered in. Then he came down. Excuse me, sir, he said to the fat controller. Please look in the tank and tell me what you see. Certainly, Inspector. He clambered up, looked in, and nearly fell off in surprise. Inspector, he whispered, can you see fish? Gracious goodness me, said the fat controller. How did the fish get there, driver? Thomas's driver scratched his head. We must have fished them from the river, and he told them about the bucket. The fat controller laughed.
Well, Thomas, so you and your driver have been fishing, but fish don't suit you, and we must get them out. So the driver and the fireman fetched rods and nets. They all took turns at fishing in Thomas's tank, while the fat controller told them how to do it. When they had caught all the fish, the station master gave them some potatoes. The driver borrowed a frying pan, while the fireman made a fire beside the line and did the cooking. Then they all had a lovely picnic supper of fish and chips. That was good, said the fat controller. But fish don't suit you, Thomas, so you mustn't do it again. No, sir, I won't, said Thomas sadly. Engines don't go fishing. It's too uncomfortable. And set off back to the sheds. As the summer of 1925 ended, autumn came to the island of Sodor. The fields were changing from yellow stubble to brown earth, and the tractor was hard at work as Thomas puffed along. Later, Thomas saw the tractor close by. Hello, I'm Terrence. I'm plowing. I'm Thomas. I'm pulling a train. What ugly wheels you've got. They're not ugly. They're caterpillars. I can go anywhere. I don't need rails. I don't want to go anywhere, said Thomas. I like my rails, thank you. Winter came with dark clouds filled with snow. I don't like it, said the driver. A heavy fall is coming. I hope it doesn't stop us. Pooh, said Thomas. Soft stuff, nothing to it. And puffed on, feeling cold but confident. They finished their journey safely, but by now the country was covered. You'll need your snowplow for the next journey, Thomas, said his driver. Pfft, said Thomas. Snow is silly soft stuff. Nothing to it. The snowplow was heavy and uncomfortable and made Thomas cross. He shook it and he banged it. And when they got back, it was so damaged that the driver had to take it off. You're a very naughty engine, he told Thomas. The next morning, Thomas's driver and fireman worked hard to mend the snowplow, but they couldn't make it fit. Thomas was pleased. I shan't have to wear it. I shan't have to wear it, he said. I hope it's all right. I hope it's all right, said Annie and Clarabelle. It's not bad here, the fireman said to the driver, but it's sure to be deep in the valley. Silly soft stuff, puffed Thomas. I didn't need that stupid old thing yesterday, and I shan't today. Snow can't stop me. He rushed into a tunnel, thinking how clever he was, but there was trouble ahead. Cinders and ashes, said Thomas. I'm stuck. And he was. Back, Thomas, back, said his driver. Thomas tried, but his wheels spun and he couldn't move. The guard went for help while all the passengers tried to dig the snow away. But as fast as they dug, more snow came down until Thomas was almost buried. Oh, my wheels and coupling rods! I shall have to stay here till I'm frozen! What a silly engine I am! And Thomas began to cry. At last, a bus came to rescue the passengers. And then, who should come to Thomas's rescue but Terrence? Snow didn't worry him. He pulled the empty coaches away, then came back for Thomas.
and slipped and tucked and slipped and tugged, and at last dragged Thomas out of the snow, ready for the journey home. Thank you, Terence. Your caterpillars are splendid. I hope you will be sensible now, Thomas, said his driver. I'll try, said Thomas. Then they set off back to the sheds. As winter ended, spring came to Sodor. One day, Thomas was at a junction when all of a sudden a bus arrived. Hello, said Thomas. Who are you? I'm Bertie. Who are you? I'm Thomas. I run this branch line. Oh, so you're Thomas. I remember now. You got stuck in the snow. I took your passengers and Terence of the tractor pulled you out. I've come to help you with your passengers today. Help me, said Thomas. I can go faster than you. You can, said Bertie. I can, said Thomas. I'll race you, said Bertie. Their drivers agreed to the race going ahead. The station master said, "Are you ready? Go!" Thomas couldn't go fast at first, and Bertie drove in front.
Why don't you go fast? Why don't you go fast? Said Annie and Clarabelle. Wait and see, hissed Thomas. He's a long way ahead, they said. But Thomas didn't care. He remembered about the level crossing.
And there was Bertie, fuming at the gates while they sailed gaily through. "Goodbye, Bertie," called Thomas. After that, the road left the railway, so they couldn't see Bertie. Then they had to stop at a station to let off some passengers. "Pip, pip, pip! Hurry, please," said Thomas. And they started again. Come along, he said. We're coming along, sang Danny and Clarabelle together. Hurry, called Thomas. Thomas looked ahead, and there was Bertie, tooting triumphantly on his horn. Oh dearie me, puffed Thomas. Steady, Thomas, steady, said his driver. We'll beat Bertie yet. We'll beat Bertie yet, echoed Annie and Clarabelle.
We'll do it, said Thomas.
Oh, bother! There's a station. Then he heard Bertie. Hello, Thomas, you must be tired. Sorry, I can't stop. We buses have to work, you know. Oh, dear, said Thomas. We've lost. But he felt much better after a drink. The signal dropped. Hurrah, we're off, called Thomas. As he rumbled along, he heard an impatient honk. And there was Bertie waiting at the traffic lights. He started with a roar and chased on after Thomas again. Now Thomas reached his full speed. Bertie tried to catch up, but Thomas was too fast. Whistling triumphantly, he plunged into the tunnel, leaving Bertie far behind. At last they raced into the final station. Everyone was there to celebrate Thomas's victory.
But they gave Bertie a warm welcome, too. "Well done, Thomas," said Bertie. "That was fun. But to beat you over that hill, I'd have to grow wings and be an aeroplane." Thomas and Bertie are now kept very busy. They often talk about their race, but the passengers don't like being bounced around like peas in a frying pan. And the Fat Controller told Thomas not to race again. But between you and me, they would like to have another race. I don't think they ever will, don't you?
He's got a short, stumpy funnel and a short, stumpy dome. The island of Sodor is where you call home. Always ready, always willing to come and help. A little cheeky, but we know he always means well. From Naples Station to Brendan Docks, helping his engine friends shut the troublesome trucks. And when he's not doing that all the time, he's working on his own branch line. He is the number one. He is the number one. Tom is your number one. You are the number one. The world knows he's a really useful engine, making tracks to greater destinations. A shining blue streak of positivity. Since 1984 he's been a friend to you and me. When you hear his whistle coming down the line, you'll always know it's gonna be a good time. You'll get a smooth ride in any Clarabelle as he pulls you through the Sodor countryside. He knows he's not alone, he's got his friends right by his side. Edward, James, Henry, Gordon, Percy, and many more in sight. They're all united, stand together through the stormy weather. Steamy or diesel, yeah, it doesn't really matter. To top of that, loves all his engines. He gave them numbers as a sign of affection. But there can only be one number one. Yeah, there can only be one.